In a series with as many games as Kingdom Hearts, you're often asked the question, which one is the best? There are those that will preach the gospel of KH3 until their voices are shot, others that will cozy up with their copy of KH1, and more still who will cling on to days until their dying breath. But I'm not here to talk about the Birth by Sleep truthers or the KH2 fanboys. This video isn't about which game is the best, nor do I think such a debate would lead to any meaningful discussion. Rather, I want to talk about a Kingdom Hearts title that is, by any reasonable metric, not the best, and yet it is my first to fifth favorite depending on the day of the week. I want to explore why, despite its many flaws, this game sits so firmly at the top of my personal rankings. I want to finally take a good long look at Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. There's some games you can look at and say, this is well made and I understand why it resonates with people, but it really isn't for me. Dark Road is the opposite of that. It has a lot of problems, and if you're scratching your head wondering what on earth I see in this game, then I don't blame you. But Dark Road captured me in a way that I haven't felt since the early days of the series, and I want to share why. First though, let's address the heffalump of the room, gameplay. Even though Dark Road is near and dear to me, I can't pretend the card-based gameplay is anything to write home about. I'm pretty apathetic towards idle games as a genre, and even if the combat here is more involved than its gacha predecessors, it doesn't do a lot for me. I describe the gameplay as serviceable. It doesn't do the game any favors, but it's not awful enough to obscure the good parts of the game, at least not for me. So what are these supposed good parts of the game? I think my appreciation for Kingdom Hearts Dark Road can be summed up in two words: hope and intrigue. This game gave me hope for the Kingdom Hearts series and the avenues it could take in this new saga. The first thing that grabbed me about Dark Road was how new it was. On the surface, that seems like an utterly bizarre statement. Not only are the majority of animations reused from Union Cross, not only is it the only entry to introduce 0 new music tracks, not only is it a prequel about characters from 6 games prior, it is literally not even its own app. But let's stop and think for a moment. By the time of Birth by Sleep, our core cast of characters for the next decade were pretty much set in stone. How many new Kingdom Hearts characters were introduced in the 10 years leading up to Dark Road? Dream Drop Distance had one new character in young Xehanort, if you could call him that. The original Kingdom Hearts Key had a decent amount, but the drip feeding of the plot diminished their impact, and most of them were non-entities until back cover. 0.2, KH3, and Melmum combined gave us one meaningful addition with Yozora. Sure, we got a few palette swaps and some barely present sequel bait, but the main story revolved entirely around existing characters. Even Union Cross could only scrounge up Brain, Strelitzia, and, if I must, Sigurd, with everyone else being related to an old identity. And then comes Dark Road with 13, count 'em, 13 new characters. 7 upperclassmen, 5 of Xehanort and Ericus' peers, and 1 new master to teach them. Immediately, there's a greater sense of possibility. I'm excited to see what will happen with this new cast of characters, and we have a small but important number of existing characters for them to bounce off of. This produces a level of intrigue that wasn't possible for Dream Drop or KH3. Going into those games, not only did we know all of the major players, we knew generally how things were going to shake out. Sora will prepare for the fight against Xehanort, he and his friends will defeat the darkness and save the day. Sure, we knew that Dark Road would generally be about Xehanort's descent into darkness, but there was still a relative plenty of unknowns. With this new arc, we are entering a fresh playing field where anything's on the table, and Dark Road is the first taste of that. Let's pivot to character design. While many fans will probably go who if you name drop any of the upperclassmen, they have some of the most refreshing pieces of KH character design in a decade. I don't have the requisite degree in fashion to talk about their outfits, but rest assured I'm a big fan of the variety and creativity on display here. And the characters themselves? Compared to our existing cast, which as we discussed were mostly designed in 2013 or earlier, the Dark Road originals are far more varied in their features. It's hard to find any dark-skinned or plus-sized characters in the Kingdom Hearts universe, or even glasses wearers, and Dark Road's willingness to push these boundaries makes me appreciative of its new additions, and makes me excited for what else the future holds. In terms of personality, most of these characters met an untimely end before they could be given proper time to shine, but even with this limited canvas, there are a lot of new ideas relative to KH. Take Volley. This ambiguously gendered chap only says a single line. It's not because he lacks screen time, but because he is mute by choice, only breaking his disciplined silence to denounce the monster who killed his friends. Or consider Baldur, whose time grieving in isolation is legitimately one of the most chilling sequences in the entire series. If the level of ideas on display here are indicative of the kinds of people we'll meet in Quadratum and beyond, then I'm excited. Brace yourselves, it's time to talk about the plot. I'm not saying I'm head over heels for Kanemaki's writing, but I think the overall direction the story takes and the themes it talks about are an important step forwards. First things first, we have death. Important characters actually die. In a series where this topic is usually avoided, I was thrilled to see the game embrace a slightly more mature twist. I think this is a natural evolution from Kingdom Hearts 3, where the introduction of the final world gave our first glimpse of how death was handled in the modern Kingdom Hearts series. Dark Road takes this idea and runs with it. The death of original characters is given significant importance and it reshapes the lives of the survivors. Xehanort, Ericus, and even Master Odin all react to the loss of the wielders in training, grieving in their own ways. We even have a graveyard which isn't a first, but illustrates the more quote-unquote realistic and final approach that the game takes with the subject. As I mentioned, that sequence with Baldur grieving the loss of Hodir made a sharp impression. On top of that, we have an expansion of the mythos of the final world. Given the ending of KH3 and the afterworld that KH4 will take place in, death has never been a more significant theme in the KH series, and I'm glad that Dark Road is willing to approach the topic and take it seriously. After death, the next most contentious D-word in the Kingdom Hearts series is Disney, and I am in love with how Dark Road handles its Disney worlds. In fact, I think this is a strong contender for the best Disney integration in the entire series. Our first real world is Wonderland, and we use the bizarre setting as a backdrop to discuss the concept of order. The peculiar rules and topsy-turvy trials make the world a perfect fit for delving into the idea of order and how each world has its own, even if they are centered around dark emotions like fear. The Disney story is used as an opportunity to flesh out the broader principles of darkness and world order by means of the characters' reactions to the Disney inhabitants. Importantly, Xehanort and his peers don't just spend a day with the Disney characters and then move on, they actually react to what's going on and relate it to the larger issues and themes. What's more, they continue to reference it after you leave the world, which to me goes a long way in making the Disney stories feel less insulated. The stories of Beast's Castle and Agrabah drive the plot forward, and this is where we learn about the upperclassmen scheme. They plan to steal items that will disrupt each world's order in an attempt to summon Kingdom Hearts. This is reminiscent of the princess stealing plot from KH1 in the sense that the danger to the Disney worlds is much more tangible. Sure, other games have Heartless running amok and organization members meddling in Disney affairs, but in KH1 and Dark Road, we experience these losses in front of our very eyes. When Alice and Jasmine get kidnapped under our noses, when the magic lamp is nearly stolen right in front of us, it feels like the Disney worlds are truly caught up in the grander stakes. Even when the focus of the story is firmly on the original cast, the Disney worlds are still woven into the experience. I was talking about death earlier, but let's not forget that a number of those deaths occurred in a Disney world. And the great pre-credits reveal also happened where? A Disney world. It's not just the worlds and themes that are integrated into the original plot, but the Disney characters too. As always, the magic mirror steals the show in Dwarf Woodlands. The wisdom of this Disney character is expertly intertwined with the dynamics of the original cast. It is his words that drive a wedge between Ver and her peers and lead to her decision to choose a different path. And, of course, there's the reveal that Old Man Xehanort discovered Ventus's location based on the words of the magic mirror. It makes sense that this omniscient being would have knowledge that extends beyond the borders of his own world. I also love how the Cage original characters recognize the power of these Disney characters and treat them as a legitimate player even when outside of their world's borders. Along a similar path is Hades. Perhaps the second most important revelation of the game, after the fact that Xehanort is bald because he shaved his head, is that Hades can commune with the final world. This is such a natural power for the Lord of the Dead to have, and it builds up the Kingdom Hearts mythos. Combined with the fairy grandmothers showing in Melody of Memory, it seems like the writers are more willing to have Disney characters display powers that relate to the greater KH cosmos, and that opens up exciting possibilities. It also does wonders for giving the original characters compelling reasons to visit the Disney worlds in the first place. The final plot element I want to touch on is the return to a more nuanced theme. More than any other game in recent times, Dark Road pushes the idea that light equals good and darkness equals bad is a narrow-minded view of the world. This theme was explored with Riku's Road to the Dawn in Reverse Rebirth, but it's been a relative rarity since. Sure, King Mickey might lecture Xemnas that light and darkness need to coexist, but it sure seems like Sora's adventures are light-driven for the next 13 years. And yes, we can point to the way in which Ericus is blinded by his adherence to light in Birth by Sleep, but the characters don't really take the time to reflect on the implications of a light-only lifestyle or learn from it in a meaningful way. By contrast, in Dark Road, Xehanort and his peers take the time to discuss the concepts of order and darkness. They reflect on what's happening around them, debating maybe if some world's order may be driven by dark emotions like fear and anger. We get to see the characters react to these themes and form their own opinions, which goes a long way in making the world and characters more compelling. As I said before, many of these debriefings are directly based on what the characters learned while in Disney worlds. The fact that we're willing to have these conversations is refreshing and does a lot to build the worlds and characters, which gives me hope for the future of the series. And that's what I said at the start. Dark Road represents hope. From the more diverse character design to the stellar Disney integration, the developments of Kingdom Hearts Dark Road are a breath of fresh air and a promise of what's to come. Dark Road isn't a full-course meal of content, but it's certainly the best appetizer I've had since the GBA. It might sound like I'm more eager for future games than I am for Dark Road itself, And though I'd argue that the power to make me excited about the future is a mark of a good game, I also adore Dark Road for what it is. I've been focused on the bigger picture trends, but there are many individual choices that stand out to me. To rattle off a few, the repurposing of True Darkness as a theme for the upperclassmen, the fact that Jafar identified the Keyblade wielders as diamonds in the rough, any new Masters of Masters content, the visual design of the final boss, the phenomenal new scene with Vanitas, Eric is walking like a carpet, and the introduction and subsequent ending of my favorite character in the series. Now, my adoration of Dark Road does not blind me to its faults. The only compliment I could give its gameplay is that it's more involved than Union Cross, which isn't exactly high praise. While I deeply appreciate the offline version, it is painfully unfinished, with a horde of content being dropped after the end of the live service. There's some frustrating inconsistencies too, like the presence of the Nobody symbol before Xemnas' birth, and the existence of Emblem Heartless in a non-data, non-projection world prior to Ansem's experiments. And let's be real, that one animation of Xehanort and Ericus jumping down a ledge in the underworld could have used at least a single minute of effort. But behind the terrible release pattern, reused assets, and endless loops of Rowdy Rumble lie, in my opinion, some fantastic ideas. I also can't ignore that my fondness for the game is greatly amplified by my personal attachment to its release. Dark Road was the very first Kingdom Hearts game I played on launch day. It might be a hot, unfinished mess of a game, but it's my hot, unfinished mess of a game. So that's why Dark Road is one of my favorite Kingdom Hearts titles. It's not the best game in the series, not even close, but I'm okay with that. To me, Dark Road represents a sense of intrigue and progress that I haven't felt since Chain of Memories. So while Kingdom Hearts Dark Road will probably go down as one of the most skippable entries, a game made for no one that was destined to fail, it holds a special place in my heart, and I hope you can at least appreciate its place in the Kingdom Hearts legacy. As an addendum, I finished writing the script the night before Missing Link was cancelled. While the cancellation will doubtless have ramifications for KH4 and beyond, it also hurts Dark Road by denying the chance to follow up on its many mysteries, from the lies of Odin and Xehanort's caretaker to the presence of Emblem Heartless in the real world. I can only hope that this content will one day find its way back into the KH series, but for now, Dark Road's story ends on something of a bitter note. Thank you for watching, and next video I promise I'll talk about a game that people actually care about, like VCast. Until then.